A very good morning from the Far East. It is time for round 10 of the 2025 ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. Welcome along to the Shanghai E-Prix. We are hugely excited for this one. The championship very much in full swing as we wait for free practice 2 to get underway this morning. Yesterday afternoon in FP1 we saw Antonio Felix da Costa quickest for Tag Heuer Porsche from Nick de Vries and Jake Hughes. 3 different manufacturers inside the top 3. But let's remind you of the calendar for season 11. We kicked off at the beginning of December. Mitch Evans taking victory from last to first for Jaguar. Then we saw Roland getting into his stride for Nissan, and that's where he has really come into his own. You can see 4 victories throughout the course of the season. But a couple of surprises over the last few weekends, including Sebastian Buemi taking his first win in the last few years, as well as Stoffel van Dorn last time out in Tokyo also. 22 drivers ready to take to the circuit here today, and we'll be keen to see what the order is going to look like at the end of the day, of course, with the E-Prix taking place later on here this afternoon. The heat and humidity is really ramping up. It is just before 8 o'clock local time, 23 degrees in terms of the air temperature, but a fair odd amount of humidity already up at about 60% or so. This is Nick de Vries, as you can see himself getting ready for the weekend's worth of action for Mahindra. Jake Hughes on the left-hand side celebrated his 31st birthday yesterday. Many happy returns to him, and he'll be hoping for some strong results. The Drivers' World Championship, though, the talking point's all about Oliver Roland. 77 points the gap he has over Pascal Wehrlein. Antonio Felix da Costa there in 3rd place, as well as Taylor Barnard. They have actually dropped down a couple of places, respectively, courtesy of the fact that they failed to score in the second and final race of the weekend in Tokyo a fortnight ago. My name's Tom Brooks. Alongside me, Andre Lotterer, Karun Chandok here to guide you through the action. Andre, talk us through this Shanghai Circuit. It's a track that you're pretty familiar with thanks to your World Endurance Championship exploits.
Yes, I used to race there in LMP1 and I actually won the title there in 2012. So we had some fun, but yeah, it is a very special turn 1 corner, very long and big open entry where you can, in Formula E you can come in with like 2 or 3 across, and then it's closing down, and in a weird way it just gets tighter and tighter, and there's attack mode there as well, and into turn 3 getting very tight. So it's not the easiest corner when you have it so long. Then accelerating all the way to turn 6, big braking zone, and then a bit of a fast flowing area, which is the nicer part of the track, and then finishing it with a chicane, which I don't know, because we kept going on the other side of the track. And yeah, last year we saw some cars touching there, and the curbs are a bit more aggressive this year, so probably not enough space for 2 cars, and then the finish line.
I'll just remind you, of course, there's a pit boost race here this afternoon as well over the course of this 3-kilometre long circuit. In terms of the race duration, 29 laps here this afternoon, 28 laps for the race tomorrow. You can see 27 degrees track temperature, 24 degrees in air temperature, 51% humidity. Chance of rain taking place here tomorrow. It looks like it could be a bit of a washout according to our weather forecast. Karun Chandok, we've had a fair bit of weather over the last couple of weekends in Formula E. Why not have another one?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've had some exciting wet races, hasn't it? But at the moment, as you said, Tom, very hot to sweat. You look quite sweaty, Tom, having run over to the commentary box. Clearly the humidity outside on this looking out the windows, it's still a bit hazy out there, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, clearly you've been running in this heat to get to the commentary box.
You are exactly that. It's important to make it on time for the start of your broadcast. Important for this man here as well, Oliver Roland, to have another strong weekend. There is a possibility he could wrap up the Drivers' World Championship as we head into Jakarta next weekend.
It's quite amazing, really, isn't it? In Formula E, I mean, it's the biggest lead ever in history. of the championship. And but we don't get this. We don't get one driver running away. He's done such an outstanding job. You have to say he's been better than half the strategists, I think, in the grid as well, trying to work out what to do this year.
Yeah, he's been really, really impressive on top of it. Not only fast, but really, really smart in the races. And on the other side, like his competitors, they've been very inconsistent. So that makes a double effect.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Green light is on at the end of pit lane then as free practice 2 gets underway. The cars all filtering out onto the circuit for the first time here today. You can see in terms of the Teams Championship, Nissan with a 15-point advantage over Porsche in second. Mahindra having a great season as well, up in third place, leapfrogged ahead of McLaren and DS Penske, courtesy of their strong results in Tokyo a couple of weeks ago.
So Nico, we go for plan 8. We'll be focusing on brake warm-up, Victor 2.0. And then we'll be push, push, coming in.
So team radio going on there for Muller. What does he mean by that? Push and Vector 2.0?
Vector 2.0, I don't know, but they're making sure they're getting the right brake temperature for their first push lap. And because obviously with this big track, there's a lot of energy going into the tires, so I think they can already push on their on the first attempt. And the temperature of the tires will go up quite quickly, so they need to do a cool down lap and do another push. So they're trying to manage and optimize the potential of the tire as good as possible. And yeah, to attack the lap, you need to have the brakes in the right temperature window as well.
You never really get super high track temperature in Shanghai because you get that haze, don't you? So the sun doesn't really warm up the asphalt like in other places. That's why you only see a 3 degrees difference at the moment, Tom. It's still early in the day, and we expect today for it to ramp up. But as Andre was saying, you can see already on the outlap, they're not going super fast. They're all just, they need to manage these tires. You know, you get 3 sets to manage across the 2 and a bit days of race weekend here. So you've really got to be careful on how many laps you do. You see the teams are cycling through the different tires. They've got a plan to make sure they have the best tires for the 2 races. That is the most important thing in the calculation, because honestly, this is not, I know we're going to come up to qualifying later in the day, but on a track like this, we're going to see peloton-style racing. Qualifying is not so important. Apart from the points, the position otherwise doesn't really matter. It's all about having the best tyres and best preparation for the race.
Yeah, that was the big talking point at the end of free practice 1 yesterday, was tyres. Drivers complaining because of the high-speed nature of this circuit, long radius corners, especially in the first sector. Drivers moaning about, you know, the tyres cooking themselves, essentially, not staying in the right operating window. Yeah,
what happens is because it's such a big open space and the drivers can push the limits quite easily, so they're always slipping and pushing the limit above the limits, and that stresses a lot the surface of the tire and makes it suffer a bit. And yeah, we even heard yesterday some drivers were talking about graining.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see how it develops over the course of this session. In terms of lap times, by the way, for yesterday in free practice 1, the quickest time set was a 1:09.280. That was nearly 4 seconds faster than we saw in free practice 1, which incidentally was the quickest time of the weekend 12 months ago when we first came here to Shanghai. The circuit is exactly the same except for these final few corners. Nothing in terms of the layout has changed, but bigger curbs have been added. Last year, if you saw the Shanghai E-Prix, you'll have seen drivers hopping over the curbs because they were quite flat. This year they've raised them up, especially on the inside, to try and stop that.
Yeah, exactly. And also it has been resurfaced, so I think the track probably has more grip as well, and yeah, a cleaner surface, better micros and macro numbers, making a better grip in general.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Just looking inside the box for Cupra Kiro. This is Nico Morel, who is the race engineer for Dan Ticktum. Ticktum fresh off the back of his first podium in Formula E in Tokyo. An amazing job from him. It's been a long time coming, especially given the performances that we've seen from him over the course of this season, and finally managed to get that after just missing out on pole position.
Must be interesting to be his engineer. All the radio communications will be quite entertaining.
You'd be quite famous, wouldn't you? Like back in your village, or you know, you went back home, you're like, oh, you're the one who's always being shouted at. But actually, you know what? we make jokes, but you're actually right, Tom. In Tokyo, honestly, without a late safety car, he would have won it, I think, because he was up on energy. He was 2% up on energy of the cars at front. The track was drying up. It went from being a not so energy limited race to suddenly being energy limited towards the end. And yeah, I think he did a fantastic job actually in that race.
Yeah, and when he realized he couldn't win it, he started to become a team player and work with for Pascal, which was quite impressive because they're not in the same team, but he knows, okay, maybe they can work together a bit because they're both under the Porsche powertrain, and Cupra is within the group. So it's good to discover that side of his professionalism as well.
Right front looking pretty bad.
Didn't get that one.
Right front looking pretty bad, I think was what he was saying about.
So that could be the difference, temperature split between the brake disc or even the tire, but probably maybe the brakes having a bit of a difference in temperatures launching the lap, which is not ideal.
Yeah, because this is a track which is the front left tire is the one that takes the biggest pain around here. Andre was saying earlier, you know, of course, that turn 1, 2 you've got here is so unique. Long right-hand corners. You put a lot of energy in the front left tire. Same again at turn 8 here. You know, you've got these long radius corners, which are atypical for a Formula E circuit. You know, Formula E tracks are normally short, sharp, 90-degree corners. So it is unusual. And so yeah, a bit strange to hear him commenting on the front right there, because actually it's the front left that struggles.
Yeah, that's why I refer to the brake discs, because you don't use them much, but that's why it's hard. So sometimes one side switches on and one side not as much, and then you have a temperature split and therefore a difference in, obviously, in braking performance.
You can see visibly the cars moving around in these long radius corners. That was Nick de Vries making his way through turn 7 and turn 8. Slightly softer Hankook tyre compound for season 11 as well, helping the lap time shrink down. But of course the main advantage in terms of lap times for the drivers being the addition of 4-wheel drive in the attack mode for the drivers this year. And as we said, brought the lap times down by about a second or so. Here's the quickest man from FP1 yesterday, Antonio Felix da Costa, just making his way through the middle sector. It's up for a personal best at the moment in sector 1, and again in sector 2, more improvements here.
It's kind of a sign of how unusual the championship has been, isn't it? That, I mean, da Costa is still up there in terms of positioning, Tom, isn't he? In terms of the drivers' championship, you know, he's third in the points, but he's not had a great run of races actually, you know, in recent times, right? So it's but it just shows that apart from Roland, no one has really been able to have the consistency of getting results, and so the points gap behind Roland is actually quite close for everyone else.
Yeah, everyone has had their inconsistencies, and which is quite normal in Formula E, and that's why the championship is always very unpredictable or very difficult. But yeah, with Roland being so consistent and that dynamic in the back, that makes a big difference. We've had like Jake Dennis, he had an amazing season when he was my teammate. He was consistently up there, but also his competitors like Evans, Cassidy, they were doing really well at the same time. So the point gap was not the one we have now.
I wonder if Mitch Evans has got a problem. We know he's carrying a big penalty coming into today, but we're nearly a quarter of the way through this practice session. He's still not done a lap. So
well, he's replaced the gearbox going into this one as well. So he had a 60-place grid penalty prior to this weekend, courtesy of a plethora of parts that were changed after a crash in Tokyo. But he's now had to replace the gearbox as well. So he's going to be starting back in Sanya, I think, to be honest with you. We're going to go down to Saunders in pit lane, who's catching up with DS Penske's Phil Charles. Saunders, what have you got for us?
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, very apt to follow on your talk of changing gearboxes, because I believe that is also what's happened with Maximilian Günter. What can you tell us?
Well, it may have done. We did have a stoppage on track yesterday. We're still working through what happened, so you'll probably find out, or we'll find out in the time coming up. But we're back on track today, all good.
Okay, well, let's talk about this race coming up today then, because we've got another pit boost race, very strategy sensitive. But now we've had a few taken place this season? Is it like to be slightly more predictable, would you say?
I don't think they're ever super predictable because it does open the strategy variation. So we'll see. This weekend, it looks like the tyres got a bigger impact than some of the previous races. So that may play a little bit of a part. Also, it's quite aggressive on the rest as well. So there's some other factors in play this weekend. So we'll see. I think it's always interesting. The pit boost for me adds another layer again. So as teams and drivers, there's a bit more to be involved with if there's not enough in Formula E already. So it should be exciting. I think both days, particularly with the wet on the Sunday, you've got some exciting racing coming up.
You segued perfectly there, Phil, to talk about the wet, because in the first wet race so far this season in Monaco, you had a very strong qualifying performance, and then in the race it started strong, but as it dried up, it maybe fell off a bit. Do you think you've got to terms with that?
Let's hope so. I think probably it's fair to say in Monaco we expected it to stay a little bit wetter than it actually did. It did dry out a bit faster than we predicted, so hopefully we'll get our predictions a little bit better this week. And it looks like it's very heavy rain for all of Sunday, so it's probably a little bit simpler in that respect.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks. Take care.
Yeah, thank you to Phil. Thank you to Saunders there down in the pit lane. Good to hear about what's going on there for Maximilian Günther, and also to have a bit of a look forward in terms of the race strategy for this weekend as well. As we said, expecting it to be a wet race in terms of the weather on Sunday, so we'll see how that is going to affect things. 3 FE weekends and 3 possible wet races coming up here. So just under half an hour left to go of free practice 2. David Beckman currently quickest at 1:09.320. So 3:24, rather, beg your pardon. So that is about the same pace that we saw at the end of FP1 yesterday, which is interesting, Andre, because if we look at the track evolution from last year, FP1 was the quickest session of the weekend.
Yeah, that's down to the cooler temperatures, I think, in the morning as well now. And Beckman and Di Grassi, I think, are the only 2 who went on attack mode. Now Roland is on an attack mode up normally. But yeah, if we look at Dennis, is in a 10.4, which is already quite quick compared to the attack mode laps. And so I think we're going to see 108s for sure today.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think we are going to be heading in toward that direction, looking inside the DS Pensley garage as well. There's Ricardo Santos, Günther's race engineer. Still no sign of Mitch Evans venturing out onto the circuit.
He's out, Tom.
Oh, yeah, he's just gone out. I beg your pardon. There we are. So that's good news for Mitch Evans. Hopefully he can set some lap times. I have to say, though, he has had a challenging season. Is probably the understatement of the century. Started off so strongly with that last to first victory in Sao Paulo. Hasn't scored a single point since then.
Yeah, that is super frustrating, and sometimes you just can't explain these things. Like things don't come together, and whatever you do, how much you work, sometimes there's just a bad rhythm there. But I'm sure it's not going to stay like that. But yeah, for sure, it's a season to forget so far for him.
I was looking at the lap times from last year. We're already 4 seconds faster than last year's time. It's a huge difference, isn't it?
Yeah, massive gulp compared to where we were this time 12 months ago, and we're keen to see how quickly those lap times are going to continue to go down. Of course, we'll be heading into qualifying in the not too distant future here in Shanghai as well.
So Roland's lap time in attack mode is third, and we saw him struggling yesterday a bit. He wasn't so happy in FP1, so I thought he might jump up, but if you think Beckman and Di Grassi, they're not at the top usually, so for him that lap time, I'm not sure he's very happy about it.
Yeah, the track's been resurfaced, hasn't it, since last year, and that's where I think some of that a big chunk of the lap time gain. I know I was there earlier this year in March for another race. And
much better balance, still a bit oversteer, but much less than yesterday and much more controllable. Traction is the same or better, and the car is more together.
That's positive, isn't it? He's happier with the car generally, and second on the times are very encouraging for them at this stage.
Oh, Günther's just going quite deep down there at turn 6. Yeah, one of the points for Di Grassi as well yesterday, he was struggling with balance of the car and oversteer. Seems to have been a pretty constant complaint of his over the course of the season. The car looks pretty good in sort of 300 kilowatt modes, but once they got into attack modes, started struggling with a fair bit of oversteer, which is interesting, of course, because we've got four-wheel drive on the cars for season 11. But hopefully that the team have been able to make some changes.
That's only on power, is it? So when you come into the corner, you don't have four-wheel drive, and that dynamic doesn't help you. But of course, on power, it is a big difference. And I think it must be very difficult to set up the cars for both power modes at the same time. Like on 300, you're just limited with the traction because you're obviously only on the rear wheels, and then you have the attack modes with four-wheel drive, so you start to understeer.
So down into turn one there, we just saw Jake Hughes. We've just seen Mitch Evans venturing out onto the circuit as he begins to wind himself up for a flying lap after yet another gearbox change for the Kiwi. Let's go down to Saunders, who's in pit lane with team principal James Barkley, find out what the latest is for Mitch in the Jaguar camp.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, James, we understand that from the notice from the team and the FIA about the penalties that Mitch is having to serve today, 60-place grid penalty. Is that possible to do in one day, or will it maybe bleed into tomorrow?
No, that can be all done today. So yeah, inverter, MGU motor generator unit, and gearbox. So yeah, the way it works is you take a 20-place grid penalty for each component, which means a 20-place grid penalty from every quali, and then a stop-and-go penalty. So yeah, we serve it all today. So it's a good opportunity to try and maximise qualifying, but a bit of a test session ultimately for us today.
We've just seen Mitch go out on track. What can you tell us about his mentality at the moment? Because it was a real difficult weekend in Tokyo. Things haven't been necessarily going well since Sao Paulo. You know, how is he?
Yeah, honestly, it's really tough. He's you know, the most consistent performer pretty much in F1 the last 5 years. He's been right there every year, and honestly, he's had a lot of really bad luck, and the team has. You know, there's some things, of course, we always look to ourselves what we can improve, but in Mexico, he had the Andretti had a power cut in front of him. He had nowhere to go. He had a brake-by-wire common part failure in Jeddah. He had a res issue in Monaco when he was P6 fighting maybe for a podium. Same in Jeddah, maybe for a podium, and then got taken out by Nick in Tokyo when he was potentially in a top 3, top 4 position again. So honestly, he should be a lot higher up. Those are items which have nothing to do with him or the team. Sometimes that's our game, right? It's to have a really bad run of luck, and honestly, that is what it is with Mitch. There's no doubt he should be much further up. But as I said yesterday to commentary, you know, we just got to control the controllables and just I said to Mitch, just keep doing the same process. Our results will come because he's been in a position numerous times to be fighting for a podium or at least a top 4, and through no fault of his own, we've had an issue.
Thanks, James.
Thanks. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you to James, thank you to Saunders there down in pit lane. Good to hear about that, and echoing the sentiments of James there as well. Evans and his consistency. Never went 2 races without scoring a point in either of the last 2 seasons in F1.
Yeah, Jake Hughes at the top of the times, got 2 Stellantis cars with Jean-Luc Verne. Coming back to Evans, Tom, you're right, but then it's been such a tough year for him, right? He won the opening race of the season in Brazil, let's not forget. Spectacularly from the back of the grid, won the opening race, scored 25 points. And as we sit here today, he still only has those 25 points. He's not scored a single point since Sao Paulo, which is crazy to think. We thought he was going to be one of the favourites.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and I'm keen to see what he's going to be able to do in this sort of second half of the season, because let's be fair, the Jaguar Championship Challenge is well and truly gone. They're down in 8th in the standings, you know, 120 points effectively off the back of Nissan. In terms of the other side of the garage as well, for Nick Cassidy, his season only really started kicking on in Monaco when he got a 3rd place. He had 1 points finish before that, which was in Jeddah, but he's still 13th in the Drivers' Championship. Mitch Evans in 16th. It's not been particularly a happy hunting ground for them, and we understand from reports by the race as well that Nick Cassidy is going to be off to pastures new for 2026, Andre. We think he's going to be Stellantis power bound, so whether that ends up being Maserati or DS Penske or whatever that team looks like in terms of the branding for next year, we don't know, but we think that's where he's going to end up.
Yeah, it's interesting because you thought you would think that he found a new home there at Jaguar with a very strong team, and also, yeah, Mitch is a good friend of his. Like, they know each other since they're kids. So, but you know, sometimes you have new opportunities, new challenges, and I think, yeah, maybe things didn't go the way he wanted to. And it would be interesting to know also who will go to Jaguar and replace them. We just saw an image of Antonio Felix da Costa there. There's some rumors that he could take his seat.
I don't think Cassidy's relationship with Jaguar has ever recovered from London last year when they lost the championship. And I say that carefully. You know, I know Pascal was the champion and won the championship. We're seeing him on screen now. But I think when you watch the way that weekend unfolded, Jaguar lost the championship more than Pascal won it on that day. And I feel like ever since that weekend, the Cassidy-Jaguar relationship has never quite recovered.
It is always hard when you have two #1 drivers on a team, and at some point when they both fight for the championship, it's a luxury problem, but it is a big problem. So yeah, the way things unfolded could be something that turned into a decision for Nick Cassidy to look for something else.
Just looking here then at the Porsche making its way through. This is Pascal Wehrlein, the reigning world champion. And down through turn 6. He's in a full attack mode lap at the moment. You can hear the tyres chirping there as he comes through turn 7 and turn 8. Personal best for him in the first and second sector. Quite needed as well, because he's down in 18th position in the standings over the crest of the hill. This is down through into this final chicane, which we were talking about, where the new curbs have been added. You can see a raised curve there on the inside of the last 2 corners. Where does this put Wehrlein in terms of the standings? He goes up to 6th fastest then, with just under 20 minutes to go of this session. We're expecting this race to be quite energy critical. Andre, who are the outliers that you expect to do well? Which teams, which powertrains do you think are going to perform well here?
Well, there are 2 sides of the story for this. Obviously, you want to have an efficient powertrain, so we know that the Porsche powertrain is very efficient, but also the Nissan is very good nowadays. And the other thing is we've heard also that there might be battery temperature issues that you also need to control, especially with the pit boost, putting more stress to the whole system, meaning that you need to manage that throughout the race. And the way to do that is sometimes to under-consume a little bit, even to what you think you could do to try to protect that battery and see who can do that best and spread that energy throughout the race. So it's not only consumption, but also the way you manage the battery.
Yeah, it's absolutely sweltering out there on the circuit in Shanghai, and as you say, in terms of the efficiency, very, very important, but also you know, thermal efficiency as well, making sure the batteries don't end up derating over the course of the race towards the end. That's what cost Mitch Evans victory in Sao Paulo 12 months ago when he was battling with Sam Bird, and Evans' battery started derating, so he lost power right at the end of the race, allowed Bird an opportunity to go through and take the win at a crucial moment there.
Also, can you guys please check on initial pickup? I don't know if I'm just getting huge cuts or something else is going on, but it feels a bit strange on initial pickup out of more slow speed corners.
So it sounds like it's going from bad to worse here for Mitch Evans. He's managed to get the car out on track following the technical problems and another gearbox change, and clearly all is not right.
Yeah, when he's talking about pickup is when he's taking the when he's going on throttle. It's clearly not doing what he wants to. So that's probably a software calibration thing that they need to investigate, and if maybe it's reading overpower and then it's cutting, or the way the systems work, it's quite complex.
So looking here at Lucas Di Grassi, podium for himself and the Lola Yamaha app team in the first year of that collaboration back in Miami, if you remember. Team getting a very strong result there, and very happy with that. The other side of the garage, Zane Maloney yet to score points, only one of 2 drivers who has not been able to get themselves off the bottom of the order, the other being David Beckman. But each team has had at least 1 podium in Formula E this year.
Yeah, I saw Lucas last weekend, actually. He was at the Monaco Grand Prix with his son, and we were chatting about it. And he was saying, you know, they're really making good progress. In that weekend you mentioned in Miami, they were always there or thereabouts, weren't they? You know, okay, if some people got penalties at the end, but they would have been in the top 6. I think they were there throughout the day. And the fact that even in practice sessions now, they're quite regularly starting to pop up in the top half of the grid is a big step in terms of where they started the season, right? You know, they were right in the early stage of that program. So I think he sounded pretty optimistic of the progress they're making.
Well, if you look also at Miami, the circuit nature, fast flowing, lots of medium speed corners, then you look here at Shanghai, very similar sort of characteristics. There's a possibility that if that car went well there, is there any reason why it shouldn't go well here?
No, I think clearly the efficiency is going to be a big factor. Tomorrow's race is 1 lap longer than the race we're going to get on Sunday, and if we expect the wet weather to come in on Sunday, then that's going to make it pretty easy for energy. So yeah, the race today is going to be super critical.
Looking at Maloney, just demonstrating how easy it is to get off, sorry, Degrassi rather, beg your pardon, how easy it is to get offline and the difficulties that you face. So he's just slightly offline into T1, struggling with a bit of rear end stability, and then he slides his way around turn 2 as well.
That's the thing with this track, it's so much easier for the drivers to drive above the limit and try a few things out, and there's so much runoff. It's a luxury you don't really have in Formula in city tracks. That's normally you have the wall, so it adds a complete different dynamic to it, pushing the limits further and using the tires a lot more than on a street track.
He's done a good lap here, Cassidy. His first 2 sectors within a 10th of the quickest time, and he goes second fastest, so only 6,000ths off JQ. So that is a good lap from Cassidy.
It gets harder and harder to improve your lap time throughout the session. Even though you have track evolution, the tire is getting hotter and hotter, so you don't have that peak grip. So let's see if they cycle through the other set of tires to have a bit of a feeling how to extract the peak out of a colder tire. Or maybe some teams are cycling through both tires throughout the session, or some keep a fresh one for the end.
Looking here at Jake Dennis with the Andretti Porsche making his way through. Good couple of weekends for him. Yeah, after finishing on the podium in Monaco, getting 4th place in the second race of the weekend in Tokyo as well. A bit of a mixed bag that weekend, actually, for Jake Dennis. Fortnight ago in Tokyo, 4th place on the Sunday, as we said, but he actually got disqualified from the race on the Saturday. The first ever black flag we've ever seen in Formula E.
Fastest lap for Jake Dennis, and super close at the top. The first 3 cars in 1/10.
Yeah, 3 drivers now in the 1:08 as well. So
yes.
Lap times now really beginning to ramp up at this stage of the session. How much relevance is this going to have for going into qualifying here, Karinov? Of course, it's not far away. Track conditions-wise, weather-wise, we're not expecting it to change too much between now and then.
No, and that's why this session is useful. But I think as I was saying earlier on, this is a session where if I was one of the teams or the drivers, of course you want to qualify well and make sure you have a decent balance to that 1 lap. But for me, this is a race or a session which is all about race prep and making sure you've got the car you want, the balance you want, and manage the tires. Because Andre's right, with these long corners in the race, it can get tricky with the tires heating up. And the efficiency, that's what really is going to be what gives you the result this weekend, not qualifying.
But you say that, but you see a lot of drivers are pushing and trying to find the limit and the rhythm to get into the duels. So I remember, like a few seasons ago, a lot of the free practice we were doing like energy saving laps and to prepare the races and to make sure we get our lift point right. So sometimes you would drive with your teammates to see the effect, but here everyone seems to be focused on 1 lap performance to qualify, because the races have become so random that they're not so linked to your perfect consumption that you plan to do lap by lap. So the packed races, it's going to be anyway different to everything you imagine that you wanted to prepare.
And I guess there's also an element of wanting to be in the safe space, right? Like if you're running it on the top 10, then you're still getting some benefit of the draft, but you're not maybe in the middle of the crazy part. Look at Da Costa last year in Misano, for example, right? He won the first day, obviously got excluded controversially, but the next day broke the front wing just because he was in that pack race. So it can easily happen.
Yeah, and when you see drivers don't want to lead, or the leader is dictating the pace, which is something completely at a different speed than what you'd think you would do if you do the race alone and you spread the energy of the race. the most efficient way to do the fastest race. It has the dynamic of the races have completely changed, and you have to position yourself very in a smart way. And now we see Da Costa with the 2 first sectors and very good lap in P4.
Yeah, we lost time in last sector, though, didn't we? 3.5 tenths just in the last sector, Jake Dennis. We saw him touch the curb a bit aggressively at the chicane. I don't know if that cost him a bit of time right at the end of the lap, but he looks like he's going to be in the fight.
The end of the lap can be also quite difficult depending on how hot your tires are. You can start the lap well in the first 2 sectors, and then in the last sector you have too much heat in the tires, and then the performance is gone.
Yeah, we've seen quite a few drivers losing time in that final sector. We were looking at Casti earlier. He looked like he was going to go fastest and then drop time in the third, in the final sector. Same for Costa as well. He was driving like he'd left the oven on, and then also lost a bit of time.
Okay, mate, Norman is doing a pit boost, so I need you to stop somewhere at pit entry. This is the regulation. We cannot come in if Norman's doing a pit boost, so I need you to lose 30 seconds at pit in, please.
So a bit of a miscommunication going on somewhere in the matrix there for Nissan, because Ollie obviously wanted to come back into the box, but there's no room at the inn.
Tom, I've got a question for you. Is that Mitch Evans, he obviously can't start on pole because we know he's carrying a big penalty. But if he does the fastest time, does he get 3 points?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So if he gets pole position, he's credited with the pole and the 3 points, to the best of my understanding. But obviously he won't be starting, he'll be starting way back down the order, won't he? And obviously with the stop go. But yeah, he will be credited as the pole sitter.
Yeah, because he's, obviously the car's quite quick. Cassidy's 3rd fastest within 200 to the quickest time. Evans hasn't yet done a quick lap maybe. So, yeah, I mean, it's something worth thinking about, isn't it? If the car's in contention, if you were Evans, you still want to do a little bit of practice at quality.
Well, no doubt about it. And if you remember, I think it was a couple of years ago in season 9, I can't remember the weekend now, it escapes me, but Evans had problems in practice and was really struggling with the setup of the car. So the team went away, chucked Tom Dillman and Joel Eriksson into the simulator, sent them round for 100, 200, 300 laps around the circuit to dial in a setup. They came back to the circuit, stuck a different setup on the car, and it completely transformed it. He went out and he went and won the race. So, there's no, just because he's not done well in practice, I know between practice and quali there's not a lot of time for turnaround here, but if the setup of the car is perhaps not to his liking, there is a possibility they might be able to change something ahead of qualifying, or maybe even after qualifying going into the race to give him a better race car to get the results.
And Da Costa just said fastest lap time, and quite impressive, I think, because it was on hot tires. So we'll see now a lot of the drivers are in the pits and changing the tires, or maybe I missed that he changed the tires or not, but obviously with fresher tires they have more performance.
I don't think he did.
No,
I think he did a cool lap and went again.
Yeah.
So, but then the last sector was the big improvement, which we know he made a mistake on the previous one. So, yeah, good lap there. We see this is the 2 Mahindras. So at the moment, down 20th and 21st, and they've jumped up Mortara 5th. Let's see what De Vries does. 2nd for De Vries. So, wow, that is so now we have you look at more and more cars coming through the top 10 within half a second at the moment.
You get the impression that Mahindra are on the precipice of a really strong result in Formula E. They've had a podium already this season, courtesy of Nick De Vries. That was back in, I beg your pardon, yeah, they have. It was in Monaco, wasn't it? Of course it was. So I wonder whether that pole position that's been eluding them for a little while is only a matter of time away. They've had strong pace over the last few weekends in Formula E. Could this finally be the weekend that we will see Mahindra back on the front row of the grid? Also, just the point I wanted to make, you see the cars emerging onto the circuit. There's a pit boost race this afternoon. It's an interesting rejoin there, because obviously you're going really fast into that sweeping turn 1, but when you're rejoining back onto the track, there is a bit of crossover.
Yeah, there is a little bit, but there's also a lot of space. But that also gives the opportunity to drivers to defend or to use that space to their advantage and to block or to try to keep your position.
Gunter there. We understand he's had a gearbox change ahead of this session, so I think he'll be okay in terms of a grid penalty, because you do get one sort of free change, if you like, without having to serve a penalty. Sort of struggling with the rear stability of the car down into turn 6. But it has been a mixed few weekends in terms of his results in Formula E. Of course, a winner this season already back in Jeddah, but other than that, it hasn't really been too much for him to write home about. Does now improve up to 4th quickest in the closing stages of this session. So let's see whether Gunter and indeed DS Penske have got the pace to bring the fight into qualifying. If you're new to Formula E, by the way, welcome. And this is what I mean as well. Look at this. There's a plethora of drivers all on fast laps, and drivers almost, some of them coming to a stop at the end of pit lane to make sure they don't disrupt drivers who are beginning a flyer.
Yeah, it is quite good good job from everyone. It's not something ideal to see, but it's under control. The engineers from the drivers going onto the track are trying to find a better track position, and obviously you don't want to impede someone, because what ends up happening is if you impede someone, if you don't do a good job, probably you're gonna get the payback as well during your push lap. So yeah, everyone tries to collaborate the best they can.
So tricky session so far for Oliver Rowland and Pascal Wehrlein down in 17th and 18th fastest. They're about 7/10 of a second off of the pace. We're looking here at Mitch Evans though. He's on his first proper flying lap in full attack mode and 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, 3/10 off at the moment, so not exactly the sector times that he'd like to see.
Yeah, let's see whether he can book himself in to the top 10. It comes across the timeline, goes 14th quickest. Again, another driver losing time in that final sector. Meanwhile, Taylor Barnard's popped himself up into second quickest. We know he's always pretty handy over the course of one lap, and indeed in the race conditions as well. Another strong lap time there for him. Not quite as quick as he did the lap previous to that, but that still would have been good enough for 4th place in that session. So good consistency there from the youngster, who turns 21 this weekend as well. See more instability.
Snap oversteer, that's how we call it.
Yeah, you will. I think we'll see a few more of those, won't we? They go into that corner, it's a long corner, loads, and eventually the rear tyres just say, nope, I've had enough. And you get that slide, and he still managed to get the line okay for the next right-hander there. But Good does another one, isn't it? A bit like Evans. He's had sort of one amazing result, but the rest of the year has been difficult for him.
Yeah, exactly that. And we know that Gunter is capable of strong results. We know the team are capable of strong results. One thing to mention is that the Stellantis power cars always seem pretty strong in wet conditions. So we looked at Monaco, we looked at Tokyo, 2 wet races and 2 races where they performed really well.
It's the drivers. It's in the wet, it's the drivers. No, but yeah, they haven't impressed so much in qualifying. They've had some strong results, but it was a bit track dependent, and yeah, I wouldn't say that the powertrain is up there, but the teams are doing a very good job. So in the rain, I think they managed to get the right tire pressures, the right systems. They're very smart with the systems at Stellantis. So, but yeah, there's been big improvements from one year to the other from other teams. So maybe the hardware is not where they want to be.
What about the Nissan power cars here, Karun, as well? You've got Sam Bird for the Neil McLaren team with the Nissan powertrain, then the 2 factory boys with Nato and Roland. They're down, mired outside the top 15.
Yeah, but you say that. Look at the times though, Tom. You got 16 cars within half a second here. If Sam Bird found a 10th and a half, he'll be in the top 10, and then it's a different conversation, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's how tight and competitive it is at the moment to do the lap. Somebody's gone off the Costa.
I think it was the Costa, yeah, trying to make it.
He was trying to stay out the way for Verlaine's push lap.
Well, Wehrlein there feeling probably a bit like Moses, parting of the seas, going down in towards turn 6.
Even they do that and they make space. It's not ideal because your reference is just gets a bit disturbed, and sometimes you manage to go through well, but it's yeah, if you're passing like 3 or 4 slow cars, even if they're offline, it's not ideal.
It needs a strong result at the end of this session, does Wehrlein, down in 21st place. This isn't going to be anything, I think, to write home about. No, 18th quickest indeed for the reigning world champion. Is that going to be it for the end of the session? It is. So we won't see an improvement for Pascal Wehrlein at the end of FP2. Is that a cause for concern, being down in 18th going into quali?
Well, that's when the job of the engineer comes in and tells the driver, look, you were impeded here and there. If we look at your ideal lap times, we're up there in 300, so it shouldn't be a problem to get into duels. And then, yeah, in 250 you were impeded. So you try to keep the confidence of the driver up, because obviously it's not a nice position to be in P18.
So we've got Verline and Roland are first and second in the championship at the moment, and they are 18th and 21st in this practice session. So if there ever was a session where, you know, it could jumble things up. My point is, if you get this in qualifying, this could jumble things up a bit, couldn't it?
Yeah, certainly could do. Let's see how it goes. Checker flag is now out at the end of FP2. Jake Hughes has taken it in 5th fastest. Good, strong result there for Jake Hughes. He'll be pleased with that for Maserati. I understand he's been talking to a few team principals down in the paddock, and this is a track that he went well at last year, getting on pole position and then subsequently his first podium in FE. What about Robin Freitz as we go down through the final sector?
If he improves the lap, Roland's going to be last.
He is. What about Freitz then? Can he improve? Goes over the timing line, does improve, and ends up 19th quickest. So the factory Nissan team down in 20th and 22nd.
Crazy, but Barnard's second.
With the same powertrain.
Yeah.
So there must be something not going the way he wants, or I mean, it could be car balance. You know, it doesn't mean that if you have the same powertrain that you're extracting everything the same way, and also tires, like what you do with the tires, how you prep them, and yeah, it could be many reasons.
Well, end of FP2, Taylor Barnard second quickest for Neil McLaren, the fastest Nissan powertrain by a long way at the end of that session. Let's go down to Saunders, who's in pit lane, catching up with the team principal for Neil McLaren, Ian James.
Ian James, we talked yesterday about the revelation that Taylor Barnard is, and seemingly going in today, again, one lap pace looking very, very strong.
Yeah, he's putting it together on this track. I think we had hoped that we'd be reasonably strong here. Also building on last year as well, where we had some good performance. But no, he's stringing it together at the moment, which is nice to see.
It's great to see him as well bringing the fight to Da Costa. You know, the person above him in the championship. There's a good age gap, a lot of experience difference there, but seemingly he is unfazed by this challenge.
Now, we spoke about it a little bit yesterday in terms of that sort of maturity that he's got, and he just keeps showing exactly, you know, just how mature he is and how together he is at the moment, regardless of whether he's got the experience on a particular circuit or not. So it's nice to see, and I'm excited to see what we can do this afternoon.
Would you say a circuit like this maybe lends itself more to the experience that Taylor has had so far in the world of motorsport, even though he's proving that he can do it in a Formula E street circuit as well?
I think you're absolutely right. I don't think there is any particular circuit that he feels comfortable on and others that he doesn't. He seems to be able to turn it on wherever he needs to do that. So no, he's just building a great momentum at the moment, and that confidence is there. It's just yeah, I think we're going to see two very different races this weekend, but even going into tomorrow with the expected rain, I'm not particularly concerned that he's going to struggle with that either.
Good place to be. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks to Ian, thanks to Saunders there down in pit lane as well. Taylor Barnard continues to be a revelation in Formula E for Neil McLaren, second quickest at the end of FP2. Teammate Sandberg down in 16th place, but very, very tight margins at the end of FP2. Half a second separating 15 drivers at the end of that session. So work to do for Bird, work to do for Natto and for Roland as well. Hopefully we'll be able to get the word on the street on what's happening there for Natto and for Roland, because they'll be disappointed with that one. Pascal Wehrlein, I'm sure, will not be too pleased there either. Only 18th quickest.
Yeah, not an ideal position, but his teammate is first, so they have a lot of good data to compare to and to pinpoint what to work on. But Da Costa is very happy about his performance, and he was very strong here last year as well. So he's definitely looking on a good result, and he's been very good at circuits like this with the packed races, and he's very smart in these conditions.
So Antonio Felix da Costa ends FP2 fastest then here in Shanghai. 2 practice sessions, and the Portuguese driver led them both, ahead of Taylor Barnard, and another strong showing from Mahindra for Nick de Vries in 3rd place, ahead of Gunther, then Jake Hughes, Jake Dennis in 5th and 6th place. Nick Casti again up inside the top 10, another strong start to his weekend, ahead of Stoffel van Dorn, Nico Müller, and Zane Maloney in the Lola Yamaha Apt car inside the top 10. You can see just how close it is between these drivers at the end of the second free practice session. Further down, you've got Mortara, Ticktum, Verne, Evans, and then David Beckman, as well as Sam Bird, all within half a second of one another in the top 16, then ahead of Buemi. Some big hitters down there, though, including Verline, Nato, as well as Oliver Rowland. So that brings an end to free practice 2. Let's go down to Saunders, who is in pit lane, catch up with the team principal for Nissan, Tommaso Volpe. Find out what's going on with Norman Nato and Oliver Rowland. Why were they so far down the order at the end of that session?
Tommaso Volpe, we've been talking so much about the giant lead that Oliver Rowland has in the championship. So seeing him finish a session at the bottom of the grid is a bit of a surprise. A particular issue or anything?
Yeah, no, we haven't found the right setup, to be honest. We tried different things, but nothing really worked. Having said that, Taylor is in P2, so the package has the potential to perform well, so hopefully we prepare better for quali.
Any concerns at this point? Is qualifying going to be hugely relevant when it comes to this very strategy-sensitive race?
Maybe today a little bit less than tomorrow because of the pit boost, so there is so much going on, but there's always an advantage, of course, starting from the front. You can be more in control of your own destiny and be out of trouble. So, of course, you want to push as much as you can.
Thanks, Tommaso.
Thank you.
Thank you to Tommaso then. So car setup woes for Nissan at the end of free practice 2. Let's hope they can turn their fortunes around. Let's have a look here at some super slow-mos though for the top 3 drivers. Nick de Vries, another strong showing for him. Second in FP1 yesterday, third here this morning in FP2.
But it's so tight now. Andre and I were just looking at it. His teammate Edo Mortara is 11th, which is, you know, midfield. If he found 1/10, he'd be in the top 5. That's, you know, 1/10 of a second, and suddenly the story is completely different. You're outside the points to being in the top 5.
Yeah, no doubt about it. 3 different powertrains inside the top 3 here. In fact, 4 different powertrains inside the top 4, because you've got Max Günther for Stellantis in 4th position there for the DS Penske team. Here, though, is Mitch Evans. 80-place grid penalty going into the E-Prix here this afternoon, so he'll be starting from the back and suffering a stop-go, whatever happens, in a pit boost race there already. So lots of work for him to do. Going into that one, he'll be hoping for a safety car to try and bunch the field up. But let's have a look then at some highlights from free practice 2. Relatively uneventful affair out on track. Drivers heading out first thing this morning onto the circuit to try and find some crucial data ahead of qualifying for round 10, which is coming along the way in not too far in the future. You can see drivers just making their way round. This is through the first few corners. Dan Ticktum also looking relatively okay at the end of that session, just 0.3 of a second shy of the pace, but down in 12th position in the checkered flag. Again, just goes to show how tight the margins are for the drivers. Anyone in particular you've got an eye on going into qualifying, Andre?
I think that Costa is a good contender, but as we said before, you know, the qualifying I don't think is so an important thing for this race. So, but yeah, my money's on the Costa.
What about yourself, Corinne? Anyone in particular that you're keeping an eye out on?
I think Andre's a better betting man than me, so I'll just agree with him.
Fair point. Yeah, we'll see how it all works out for the drivers when we head into qualifying. You can see the lowly Yamaha app. This is Lucas de Grassi, who had a bit of a snap of oversteer down into that first corner. And Da Costa continued on with his strong performances here this weekend. Mitch Evans managing to get out onto the circuit. Let's get down to Saunders just at the end of this session then. Saunders, what have you got for us?
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I've been talking to drivers that's been up and down towards the weighbridge, and it seems like there was some, you said it yourself, real setup woes. It seems like most of the problems came from the actual setup of the car, and it was evident because a lot of cars were in and out of the pit lane getting tweaks done to them all through that session. Ticktum actually said it was going to be qualifying that revolved very much around the car setup as opposed to driver-by-driver talent or anything like that. So yeah, interesting one to watch for quali. Have they done enough to get the pace in?
Yep, that is a crucial question. Thank you, Saunders. We'll be finding out the answers when qualifying gets underway. We're on air for that at 10 a.m. local time. Qualifying getting underway at 10:20. So about an hour and a half or so to go, and we'll get an idea of who is going to be lining up on the grid. Which drivers will be delighted, which will be disappointed. It's going to be hugely exciting to see how the grid will line up for round 10 here in Shanghai. The upshot is at the end of free practice 2, it is Antonio Felix da Costa who is once again fastest. 2 from 2 here in China. We'll see you for quali.